that's, you know, when of course,
to have enough
I took the coat off and then I was holding the coat. I'd rather it be like this.
Both, actually. A good mix of both.
Humidity.
And I ended up not even do it.
It's be nice tomorrow and Thursday, and then
Back to the
And I usually do sun.
But
I wasn't really.
it's great for a street dance. It'll be 95.
Jump right, change of clothes.
That's Saturday.
But it was hot last year.
Was I? Was I really there?
I should have gone over there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out.
Well, I'm trying to make some changes, so I had some Subway.
I'm gonna be away.
I didn't say anything though. I didn't respond to any of the presentation.
That's what it was about.
I was only there as observation.
I just haven't called the guy back.
And I can't even tell you who was there other than Corby. I know Corby. I don't know the rest of them.
Oh.
And I thought all three of the presentations were on.
Yeah, because.
So I wasn't too impressed. Thank you, Brian.
University of Colorado,
Oh, wow.
University of Illinois, Indiana University, Marquette,
Wow.
They get enough help. They're doing
Miami,
fine. They can't open during the day
Ohio.
yet. They don't have, they need another cook.
They can't do lunch
Michigan,
tonight?
Michigan State,
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good. We went up there Tuesday.
Minnesota,
We won the top. We went up there Tuesday.
Yeah?
Yeah.
People going up to the
Missouri.
door
It is a
walking away, and I
beautiful
said,
campus,
"This
though.
Is it?
We went up there and said,
Missouri?
before. So as we were walking back to the
Oh, you're gonna be here for a while. Northwestern,
We probably never go out.
Northwestern, Ohio State, Oregon,
I gotta find that.
Purdue, and then Wisconsin.
Yeah, well, I can cook.
He says,
Probably I could find some policy.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I'm sure
they
it says
just
right here.
don't
It talks
have
all
it
about
out.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and I sent you the
What's your,
website.
oh, excellent.
I emailed it for you.
You're perfect. Thank you.
No,
That's
no,
it.
but sometimes I'm useful, but I'm not for
No.
not anywhere close.
Called in a favor.
Just ask most people in this room, they'll tell you the far opposite.
I think you're pretty good.
I'm just telling you.
And just cut, and that's it.
Definitely lucky there.
You are very modern.
Like it.
Oh, thank you. I've got a good family. I'm lucky there. Great
Well, I
wife.
think he's,
She is. Yeah, I had to get to know her.
Yeah. Yep.
She's too pretty. Some of that pretty camping on.
It was funny because the first time I shot her, especially my sister, who was always really protective,
Then you get
was
Isaiah.
at a racetrack when I was driving race cars. And
That kid.
we saw her on the other side of the track when we were in the infield.
If you looked it up in the
I'm like, hey, there she is.
His picture.
My sister automatically got this guard.
I mean, Rick's was even better than ours.
She was
but,
not happy at all.
I just
All of a sudden she
trying to
came in and she
communicate
got
with this kid.
the first thing Kristen goes, she threw her purse down and she's like, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do anything? You know, I get Mark anything great. So what can I do? And my sister was like, that didn't fit. That's not what I thought.
Well, the first time I saw her was at Arbiter.
would you like one?
Okay.
With some of that.
Yep.
She was all decked out.
He brings it out on a plate with ice cream. And I looked at him and I said,
I don't know about that.
we were getting
She's
that
too
really
funny.
becoming-
oh, I thought you wanted to try it first.
Well, she always was. I now realize she is very special.
Put it in the go box. It's 90 degrees outside.
Ice
Same
cream.
opens up, the ice cream's still in, nice.
Tenth, 2018 meeting of the Noblesville Common Council. If you're able to join us, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Taylor, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Ayers? Mr. Boyce?
Present?
Mr. Hampton?
Present?
Mr. Johnson? Mr. O'Connor?
Present.
Ms. Rowland? Mr. Taylor?
Present.
Ms. Wiles? Mr. Jensen? Mr. President, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Moving right along with tonight's approval of minutes for the June 26, 2018 Common Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? 8-0. Thank you very much. Approval of tonight's agenda.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? 8-0. Petitions or comments by citizens who are present? I have none, but if you would like to speak, there are comment cards just out the door there. Please hand them to the clerk when you're ready, and we'll move along to the mayor's report to council. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. A little bit busy week, short week, but busy. Serve Noblesville kicked off on the 27th, had a week of service. I think they had over 60 projects that they accomplished during that period of time. I'm a member of the Regional Strategy for Economic Development, known as Indy Partnership or Accelerate Indy and some other names. I like the partnership idea myself. On the Friday, we had on the 29th, our cultural celebration on the square, cut the ribbon at Grindstone Public House. Nice to have them back in town and in that location. And then, of course, on the 4th, we had our parade and celebration. I've been in a lot of parades, since I've been mayor. Never a better one and a more well-attended and a very appreciative audience. Of course, Jason Seaman and Ella were the honored guests, as well as Megan Kamak, or whatever her name is now, pardon me, Megan Kamak Schuler,
Yep.
and then our reserve officer as well. So just a great day in that regard. Tomorrow we do have an executive briefing about the partnership. It's being held at Ivy Tech, pardon me. On Wednesday we cut a ribbon at Ruhoff, Deer Creek, Meerhoff, Ruhoff Music Center. Food Truck Friday is Friday. Our Jubilee is Friday, raising money, as you may know, for 4 charities in the city. It is at the Embassy Suites. I think hopefully most everybody's been there, just a great facility. Then Saturday night's the street dance. We have students coming from Cittadella and Nova Prada. If you're not aware, next week, they will be here on Monday through that week. We're having a breakfast on Monday and a tour of City Hall, and then they have other things they're doing. And there's a Miller Fest. I think it's sponsored by our Parks Department primarily, a big Noblesville Fest to benefit the victims and all of those at West Middle School. So again, a little busy week, and busy week coming up as well. Are there any questions of me?
Questions of the mayor? Seeing none.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll move along to council committee reports. Mr. Ayer.
Friday, July 6th, pursuant to public notice, the Street Committee, Roads Committee met. Myself, Mr. Hampton, Mr. Jensen, Mr. Boyce, and Mr. O'Connor were present, along with the city clerk, Ms. Lees, and our city engineer, Mr. Berry. There were several updates. I'm going to highlight a few of them, and then I'll pass this around if anybody wants to say anything else. Midland Trace Trail pedestrian crossing signal at Hazeldale Road is complete. Paving for Phase 2 from Hazeldale to Willow View Road is complete. The land acquisition from Willow View to Hegg Road is now in progress. Our 2018 street resurfacing, the rehabilitation of 191st Street in the Little Chicago area is complete, except for some minor grading. Mill Grove is complete, and work in the meadows is underway at this time. Summer Road was widened and turn lanes were constructed. Signs are posted notifying of coming alley work from Monument Street to Roosevelt Street and along Grant Street. That'll be happening sometime within the next 30 days. About 20% of the resurfacing and sidewalk contract has been completed. Riverwalk permit was issued from the state to allow construction of Phase 4 from Division Street to Southside Park. Construction is expected in the late summer, early fall. Levee Trail is being bid this month along with the Riverwalk Phase 4 trail. Construction late summer, early fall. Our MPO projects, we have 3 roundabout projects. 2 of them are later into 19, so I won't go over those. But the 19th and Pleasant Street out at the post office intersection, bids have been let and will be opened on July 18th for a fall construction date. The intersection will remain open during construction. Oleo and 146th Street, the preliminary design is complete. They're going to be working and moving the legal drainage as part of the project, and construction won't start until next year on that. Logan Street pedestrian bridge, we're waiting for an update from the county as to where they're at with it. Mr. Hampton asked regarding Little Chicago Road Trail and the reseeding work. That's kind of been an ongoing thing. And Mr. Berry stated that reseeding will be done in the fall in order to try to help keep that seed on the ground long enough for the grass to grow. That's it.
Any questions, Mr. Ayer? Ms. Rowland?
Back to the Little Chicago Trail. Sections that are kind of ditch areas where culvert, they're just full of weeds and very tall weeds. The grass may not be growing, but the weeds certainly are.
I can let Mr. Hampton ask that. I didn't highlight that
Is that
here,
your
but
question too?
he did ask the question in the meeting, and we did get a good answer. That is in the wetlands area, so therefore they can't touch it or do anything with it. And that's what the answer was. Whether
that makes sense why it's growing back. No, it doesn't.
I've been approached by it too.
Yeah, it looks bad. It definitely looks bad, and we talked about that in the roads committee.
And maybe I will ask Mr. Berry to investigate that a little further, or the street department or somebody, to see if we can do anything with it.
I could walk down there and take care of that.
Well, that's,
Yeah, and don't let Mr. Thompson hear this either.
I was just kidding.
well,
Just kidding.
yeah, that's not a new question. That was asked
Okay,
in the meeting.
good.
And-
Well, I go by
And
there
we
too.
will continue to see if we can work on getting something
Seems
done
like
there.
there ought to be a way. It's a very small wetland.
I'll have to take a look
is
at it.
small,
I
but
have not seen it. So.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Additional questions, Mr. Ayer? Seeing none, additional council committee reports. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Downtown District Committee met on June 27th. We hadn't had a meeting in a while, so we had several things that we talked about. Lorna Steele, Noblesville Main Street, has joined the committee, which should be a big asset to this committee. First issue of business was Seminary Park, which we've talked about several times. Mr. Bennett presented 2 budget options and a timeline for upgrading Seminary Park. The original presentation to the committee estimated a cost of $180,000, but since then, the estimate costs have risen significantly, so he kind of put something together as we can do it in phases. There was discussion about the budget and the options and that stuff, so that was the way we went. First phase will be $267,000 estimated cost for phase 1. Mr. Bennett also noted some parts of the construction to be eligible for park impact fee funding, and they are continuing to pursue sponsorships, which they have done real well so far. We haven't been able to put a dollar amount to that because we hadn't decided what we were going to do. So now that we've decided what direction we want to go, they're going to pursue that, and I think that cost will come down. Next topic was update on alley activation. Ailey presented notes on activation of two alleys downtown, north and east alleys, the north being Kirk's, the east being Mateo's. This has been in progress for 2 years. She stated that the east alley may be closed only to the cross alley that runs north and south, which is Mateo's. That's coming along real well. At this time, we're getting estimate costs, and they're expected to be between $20,000 and $40,000, and that is for basically the completion of getting those alleys activated. Big topic was, there was a discussion about a color differentiation downtown for the rest of the city. Committee preferred black for the downtown. Like I said, a lot of discussion. I know we had lights put up last year, but those lights, I've already been around town and could be put in several locations. We got plenty more lights to buy. So Mr. Gutschall is going to complete an inventory and items and estimate of the cost to change those items, bring that back to the committee, and then I guess from there we'll decide what everybody wants to do. There was some expressed frustration with replacing historic bricks with stamped bricks, as well with concrete patches. So hopefully moving forward, I know we got enough of the bricks. We can, if we need something, the stamped bricks tore out, maybe we can put the historic bricks back. I think we can testify from City Hall here that wasn't the best thing to use. I don't know how many times it's been redone, but it doesn't seem to last or hold up very well. Next was report on funds allotted to downtown district. Mr. Cook shared a report of past potential expenditures for downtown improvements. The committee agreed that the downtown district fund should be used for improvements and enhancements, but not for maintenance or operations. Discussion on the downtown infrastructure list. We asked for a report on everything that is being done or has been completed or will be done. And Mr. Cook is going to get that report to us. Next topic, discussion how information on downtown projects and events is conveyed to citizens or merchants. In the last month, I've had several people and merchants say they didn't know what was going on downtown. You know, I think some of that's, if anybody does social media, it's all over social media what we do downtown. But the answer was that Judy Johnson, Mr. Bennett, and now Laura Steele will be working hand in hand. And Lorna's going to work more with the merchant side and see if we can't get something, whether it's a flyer or whether it's just more communication to the downtown merchants. I don't think we do that bad a job, but if we can make it better, it's even more feasible for the city. So that's going to be worked on. And then, no, it's not last. Had several citizens talk about a drinking fountain downtown. That was the last thing, and this meeting went on for over 2 hours. So I brought that up at the very last and said, think about it, bring it back at our next meeting. But with that being said, somebody said there's already water over the alley activation on the, I guess it'd be on the south side. So if that's true, then I think that's where we need to put it. That should make some people happy. And they also said maybe one for the dog. So if that happens, that's fine too.
One for the dog?
Well, they make them one for.
Oh, the lower one
yeah.
for the dog, okay.
Or kids, whatever. but, you know, I just, it's something that people wanted, yeah. So I think we need to look into it, and it looks like it's a very inexpensive add-on to the alley activation. The last thing was the walk downtown to identify infrastructure issues, concerns. That did not take place due to the heat and time commitments to committee members. And that's it. Questions, or did I forget anything for council members that were there?
I'm just going to make a clarification that the discussion about the color of light fixtures and benches and other things is that we want to have something that identifies what is the downtown district area. And so there's a consensus from the committee of, could we make all of those things black, and where elsewhere in the city those streetlights are green. So it's just a way to identify what the downtown district looks like. We're going to take a look at what those costs look like to make those changes. But we think that that would just add a little more pizzazz to the downtown area.
One more thing, Chris.
Yeah.
Ms. Wiles mentioned that, and also I forgot to mention that Comtex will have their streetscape done in mid-July for us to look at, and I do know that was one thing that they had said, that to identify downtown, it'd be nice to have a different color of street light. So that's where that whole conversation came from, and we'll look and see what we get back when we see the streetscape, and at least that'll give us something to build on the whole streetscape and move forward.
Questions, Mr. Taylor? Seeing none, additional council committee reports, Mr. O'Connor.
Mr. President, thank you. The Finance Committee met July 5th. A couple of the items that are on the, or in the minutes are on our agenda this evening, so I won't spend much time on those. We did have a very nice presentation from Holly Ramone on our employee benefits, just to get up to date on where we are, what kind of costs are we incurring, and then looking at recommendations that she was going to make for 2019. So we'll see all of those as part of the budgeting process, but it gave us an opportunity just to catch up on where we are. But suffice to say, one of the things that we did approve last year was a deferred comp match, which has worked out very nicely, I think, for not only the city, but the employees as well. The participation rate's up, and so I think it is, at least from an attraction perspective, a good way to not only retain but attract new employees. The CAFR report is complete. I think it's been posted on the website, and the exit meeting's the 12th of July. So I think Mr. Jensen will be there, the mayor will be there, Mr. Spalding to be there. But the good news is there were only suggestions made by the auditors. There were no significant findings. So I think we should all feel very comfortable with the financials that we now have and we're publishing. The second reading of the COA debt service sinking funds on the agenda. And we also have another transfer that has to do with CCD. That's also on the agenda. As far as school safety officers are concerned, it appears that there may be enough funding available in the police budget to carry the new officers for the first part of 18, and we can budget the additional dollars for those officers in the 19. So hopefully we won't need to do an appropriation. And looks like we won't. Let's see. We had a little bit of a discussion about a proposed, well, I guess I would call it process that we may want to look at from council perspective in terms of having things presented to different committees and having those flow from economic development to finance to the council. In light of all these new projects that we're getting and seeing, trying to add a little more structure to that so that we can actually vet those at each stage so that when they come to council, hopefully we will have all seen what's going to be proposed and have a better understanding of the economics behind it. So I'm going to take a stab at trying to write a resolution to address that and make it part of the council process as opposed to adding it to an ordinance, which we could do, but I think as part of the council rules, it probably makes more sense. So let's see if there's anything else that I'm missing. I don't think so. Mr. Spalding continues his efforts on charts of accounts, which will be an ongoing situation. I mean, as things come up and are identified, changes will be made, but I think ultimately it will streamline his process. So it'd be good for everybody. And the claims come to you with a favorable recommendation as well as the transfer resolution on the agenda.
Any questions of Mr. O'Connor? Seeing none, additional council committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on then to approval of claims.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? 8-0. Thank you very much. Moving right along to previously discussed ordinances. Ordinance 21-06-18. Council to consider ordinance 21-06-18, an ordinance approving additional appropriations in the COA debt sinking fund. Mr. Spalding.
Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, Controller. And if you will indulge me for a moment before I jump right into that, I thought I would make two kind of additional statements regarding the Finance Committee report, just for the sake of full disclosure. On the CAFR, We had thought at the time of the meeting that it would already be posted on the city's website, but don't have the final document, so that may not happen till tomorrow or Thursday or what have you, but just want that to be clear. And then one other thing too on the school resource officer funding, what Mr. O'Connor said is correct. The police department has indicated that they think they can absorb the 2018 funding within their existing budget, but I still think you're actually going to see a transfer resolution to address some of the equipment and training costs that are associated with those officers. So there may still be something coming. I'm working with them on that, but just wanted to let you know that. All right, for Ordinance 210618, which is co-ed debt service sinking, debt sinking fund. Again, this is the second reading, and just reiterating what I said before, this is really, and this and the other item that I have tonight are really just cleanup items. What this is an appropriation of funds for an existing obligation of the city that we have been paying and will continue to pay. So the additional appropriation doesn't really represent an increased expenditure of the city. What it really represents is getting the budget structured the proper way so that the funds that are used to cover this expense are appropriated as opposed to being spent from unappropriated funds. To kind of ease your concern, while they should have always been appropriated, there is also a basic underlying obligation of the city to pay its debt. So the fact that they were paid from the COET fund in the past without appropriation still met the requirements of the city to pay the debt. But again, as you've heard from me on any number of issues, I'm trying to really, structure processes so that everything's super transparent and clear. So these funds should have been appropriated in the past and should have frankly been appropriated in the 2018 budget that you adopted, and they weren't. And I've now identified that issue and bringing it to your attention tonight. So that's it for that item.
Questions of Mr. Spalding? Seeing none, this item is open for a public hearing for ordinance, so we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for ordinance 21-06-18.
President,
Ms. Wiles?
seeing no one come forth for the public hearing, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. All those in favor of closing the public hearing? 8-0, thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President,
Mr.
I'll move to approve ordinance number 21-06-18, additional appropriation ordinance for the COET debt sinking fund.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
Aye.
Ms. Rowland? Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Wiles?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Jensen?
Aye.
8-0, the ordinance is approved.
Very much. Thank you, Mr. Spalding. New ordinances for discussion. Ordinance 22-07-18. Council to consider ordinance 22-07-18, an ordinance amending ordinance 38-10-10 regarding an amended preliminary development plan for Hazeldale School and ball fields at 3025 Westfield Road.
Motion to introduce?
Second.
Motion seconded. Ms. Yelton. Good evening.
Good evening. The ordinance before you is basically an amendment to a preliminary development plan that was adopted back in 2010 for the Hazeldale Elementary School. What this does is includes this portion of the property that is currently owned by the schools and obviously is where they have their baseball fields. That is what this amendment is all about. It was given a public hearing at the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission did recommend by a unanimous vote that this be adopted as submitted. There is submitted correspondence requesting a suspension of your rules this evening and approval of this ordinance tonight. And with that, I will ask if you have any questions of staff.
Questions of Ms. Yelton? Does anyone like to speak? Mr. Wirt, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Council.
For the record, Andy Wirt, land use professional, Churchill and Antrim, offices at 2 North 9th Street here in Noblesville. Here tonight with Roy Wallace, Noblesville Schools, Buildings and Grounds. It's just as straightforward as Joyce Ann made it out to be. We've got a soccer field that we're turning into a baseball diamond. The administration is anxious to start that construction process to get the diamond ready for next season. So we would appreciate if you would consider waiving your rules and approving tonight. Roy and I are happy to answer questions.
Any questions of Mr. Wirt?
Mr. President, just one.
Connor?
Andy, this, as I recall from Plan Commission, there wasn't any plan to light this field, was there? Or is there lighting?
We've actually removed the lights that were there before for the soccer field. Those are down now, and no plans to erect new
Okay,
ones.
that's what I thought I heard. Thanks.
Mr. Hampton?
Just a point of clarification, we talked about this, I think, at TAC. This is considered, this will be the junior varsity field? Is that what the plan is with this?
I believe so.
Question, Mr. Ayer?
President, I would move that we suspend the rules for 22-07-18 and pass on first reading.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of waiving the rules? 8-0. Do we have a motion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Wiles?
I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 22-07-18.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Ms. Rowland. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Ayer.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Jensen.
Aye.
8-0, the ordinance is approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Go Millers. Next, new ordinance for discussion, 23-07-18. Council to consider ordinance 23-07-18, an ordinance amending ordinance 28-8-97, and the zoning commitments for the Prairie Lakes Plan Development, specifically Lot 7, 14325 Mundy Drive.
Motion to introduce.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Good evening, Ms. Yeldon, again.
Good evening again. The item before you is an amendment to a portion of the Prairie Lakes Plan Development. As many of you are probably aware, the Prairie Lakes Plan Development is bounded by 146th Street, 141st Street, State Road 37, and Cumberland Road. That entire area is considered the Prairie Lakes Plan Development. The property that we are concerned about this evening is the area that is outlined here in magenta. It is Lot 7. Basically, as you can see from this commercial portion of that PD, that the only remaining lot, should this lot be developed, is the one immediately to the south. That is the only vacant lot that would be remaining. Again, the proposed amendment basically has to do with specifically Lot 7. And it would be to allow a tire service maintenance facility on this parcel of property. Within their zoning commitments, there was some ambiguity in a couple places. We erred or cautioned, on the more restrictive interpretation. So that's why they're back before you this evening asking for that amendment to allow that type of a use on this particular parcel of property. Again, it was heard at the Plan Commission during the public hearing process. It was sent to the council by a unanimous vote of the Plan Commission with a favorable recommendation for adoption. Again, this item does have correspondence submitted requesting a suspension of the rules this evening and adoption basically at this meeting.
Suzanne, I think it's also important to point out that there's a commitment there will be no outside storage at any time. So you're not going to have tires and signs and stuff out front.
It's a building up there.
Here is an example. This is a building that basically they have at another location here in Indiana. It is basically a brick building. This area here would be the area that would be fronting basically, I believe, south. The items that you see along here, which are basically the little tires, you know, stuff would not be permitted. They are well aware of the fact we had quite a lengthy discussion with them before they came to the Plan Commission in regards to any outside storage. Outside storage or display of materials is not permitted anyway, but we did make note of that in this amendment.
Questions of Ms. Yelton? Boyce?
And they obviously would not be allowed to have the sign that's down there in the bottom right of that either, correct?
Oh, yes, the only signage that they will get will be signage on the building. And they would be allowed basically 2 signs because they have 2 road frontages. Because they front on Mundy Drive and because they front on State Road 37, they would be allowed to have 2 frontages. Now, having said that, they don't have to put those signs facing those 2 streets. So in other words, if this was the 37th Street side and they wanted to put a sign there and put a sign here that faced the interior parking lot, they could do that, but that would mean that they would not get a sign along Mundy Drive.
Additional comments or questions? You see the petitioner is here to speak, or? All right, welcome. Just name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Blackford from Donegal, Tui and Bailey, 50 South Vernian Street, Suite 700, Indianapolis. I don't necessarily have anything to add to Ms. Yelton's presentation. They have agreed no outdoor display of goods, and all operations will be taking place indoors as well. So if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we would appreciate you considering waiving your rules to vote on this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to suspend the rules?
President,
Mr. Ayer?
by the motion we suspend the rules and passed on first reading ordinance 23-07-18, an ordinance amending the zoning commitments for the Prairie Lakes Plan Development, specifically Lot 7.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of suspending the rules? 8-0. Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President,
Wiles?
I would make a motion that we approve ordinance number 23-07-18.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Ms. Rowland. Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Ms. Wiles.
Aye.
Mr. Ayer.
Aye.
Mr. Boyce.
Aye.
Mr. Hampton.
Aye.
Mr. Jensen.
Aye.
8-0, the ordinance is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Moving along to transfer item number 1, council to consider transfers into the Cumulative Capital Development Fund. Welcome back, Mr. Spalding.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council, Jeff Spalding, City Controller. I just have that habit. I've done it for years in other settings. Before you is a transfer resolution. Again, it's another cleanup item, and it's a fairly quirky situation, but before I go into the detail, I did, sitting here, just notice a typo in the non-substantive sections of the ordinance, of the transfer resolution in the whereas clauses. There's the Business Park TIF Fund. It's referenced twice in both the second and fourth whereas clause, and it's referenced as Fund 503 in one place and 502 in the other. It's 502. So I don't know how we amend that or what have you. It's not substantive to the details of the resolution, but wanted to end that confusion. So the case here is the purpose for this transfer is, again, a cleanup to really align what we're doing from an accounting standpoint with kind of the intention to design the way the process was intended to function with regard to, in this case, the redevelopment district bonds of 2014. When that bond was issued, the funding mechanism set up for paying for that bond was to actually have the cost shared between the Business Park TIF and the Cumulative Capital Development Fund. And the reason is that bond was issued to fund an array of projects But amongst the things being funded were improvements to the public safety building, and it was that portion of the bond issue that was being used for those improvements to the public safety building that was supposed to be funded from the CCD fund. Since the inception of that bond, the debt service has never been proportionally allocated out to the CCD fund. Therefore, it wasn't budgeted that way, so on and so forth. Again, I want to start paying this as intended. And so what this resolution does is it takes $163,637 that's currently in the 2018 budget but funded in the contingency for the CCD and allocates it down into various operating or various departmental parts of the CCD budget to fund this debt service payment. And then that's the last little nuanced complication here, is that in an effort to ultimately move us to a point where we really have good, clear information about what it costs to run all the various functions of city government, what I chose to do was allocate the cost for these improvements to the public safety building across the departments that are operating out of that building. And so that's why you see that this transfer coming from non-departmental contingency goes into 3 departmental sub-funds of the CCD fund, and it's for the purpose of making that debt service payment. And oh my goodness, I as I'm looking at it, I just saw another substantive error in this. Oh. And that is, on the increases, in all cases, the expenditure series should say 300 and say services and other charges. And frankly, I can't tell you how I missed it, but I did. So we may need to do some kind of voice amendment, or how do you want to handle that?
Do you need this meeting, Jeff? Or
no, not necessarily.
Why don't we?
But I thought it would, if it was simple enough.
And amended.
So.
And then bring it back.
Yeah, and then I could make a clean copy tomorrow. My apologies. I need a proofreader.
Right.
We should have been your proofreader.
I was.
Any questions of Mr. Spalding? Seeing none, Mr. Ayer.
President, I move that we approve the transfer in the Cumulative Capital Development Fund with the amendments of the second paragraph in the whereas portion, that the Park TIF fund be changed to 502 from 503. And under the fire expenditure series, was there another word there besides expenditure series that went into that, Mr. Spalding?
Well, the expenditure series would change from 400 to 300. Then
correct,
it would
okay.
Be titled services and other charges.
All right. Service be changed. The series would be 300 to be titled services and other charges. And in the court section of that, it'd be changed to 300 with expenditures and other charges to be added also.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve as amended. All those in favor of approving as amended? 8-0. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and I apologize.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for walking us through that, too. Much appreciated. Moving on to council comments. I have one. I'll just say, this week when we sent flowers on behalf of the city to Mayor Andy Cook, who lost his grandson this past weekend. I know I join all of the members of the Common Council with keeping the Cook family in our thoughts and prayers going forward. Mr. O'Connor?
More question than a comment. Has everyone gotten the dates for the budget meetings forthcoming? I know that clerk sent those dates out, so I just want to make sure everybody received those, and hopefully everybody will be able to make all those meetings, but understand if you can't, some things happen or whatever, but so I got everybody nodding, that's good.
I'll miss one.
Additional comments? Seeing none, we have a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Moved in second. All those in favor? Good evening. Thank you.